So there I was, playing through Paper Mario The Thousand-Year Door yet again, when I realized something dark. Twilight Town's residents would have an extremely tough time surviving, possibly being unable to live there at all. I can guess what you're thinking. Sophie, you've completely lost it this time. Twilight Town doesn't have any weather in it. What could you possibly have to talk about here? Are you just using this as an excuse to talk about your favorite video game of all time? Okay, fair. I will take any excuse I can find to talk about the Thousand-Year Door. But Twilight Town is unique from every other location in this game. How? Well, the sun doesn't shine. At all. There's a moon, and that's it. We never see the sun. As its name suggests, Twilight Town lives in a state of literal twilight. It's mostly dark, with the only natural light coming from the light of the moon. This leaves me with several questions, but what sticks out among them all? Is it possible for life to survive if the sun never shines? What changes on an Earth-like planet if we never see the sun, but only the moon? Come on, let's find out together. First things first, we already know this should not happen to begin with. As we learned in Super Mario Odyssey, Mario's universe seems to be on an Earth-like planet, so we can assume the way weather works here is similar to that of Earth. We're told by the Thousand-Year Door that the sun never shines in Twilight Town. If that's true, then that means there has to be a place on this planet where the sun doesn't shine. This does not happen on Earth, at least not permanently. During certain times of year, parts of Earth don't see any daylight, like many parts of Alaska during the winter. There are periods where many areas of the state are plunged into darkness for 24 hours a day, but it doesn't last forever. Unlike Twilight Town's darkness, which puts the town into permanent night 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, or 366 if it's a leap year. Look, while there are very, very specific circumstances that could technically plunge one singular town on a planet into permanent night, if this planet is anything like Earth, which we know it is, this town should not be plunged into permanent night to begin with. However, since Mario games decidedly don't like logic, we're going to have to run with the idea that it's somehow possible for Mario to be on a planet where there's a singular town on the entire globe where the sun just doesn't shine. So what exactly happens when the sun doesn't shine? Well, to start with the short-term effects, solar radiation from the sun is significantly lower than it would be elsewhere. In fact, Twilight Town should receive very little of it. You might be questioning why, given that the moon reflects light from the sun. That's the entire reason we can see the moon, after all. Well, that's precisely the problem. The moon reflects light and radiation. If the sun is shining directly onto a planet, like it normally does, Earth receives a greater percentage of the radiation that the sun emits. With the moon being a sort of mediator between the two, there's an extra step that wasn't there before. The planet receives a lot less light from the sun because the moon can only reflect so much of the sun's light and radiation to the planet below. What does that mean? To put it quite simply, any area without sunlight and radiation is going to consist of lower temperatures. By quite a bit, in fact. It should be a lot cooler in Twilight Town compared to anywhere else. In fact, arguably, it could be just as cold, if not even colder, than Far Outpost, the place nearest to Twilight Town on the map. I can imagine somebody out there just scoffed at that idea, but hear me out on this one. This place gets no heat from the sun at all, given that it's permanent night. On top of that, radiation that comes from the land goes out straight into the atmosphere. Terrestrial radiation, or radiation that is emitted directly from Earth, often leaves the planet during the night. It's the way the Earth cools down after it absorbs heat all day from the sun. However, there are ways where it can remain in the atmosphere. The clouds are one such source. Clouds can trap terrestrial radiation and keep the land warm. I'm not saying it increases the temperature by several degrees, but it can help keep the temperature somewhat consistent or decrease at a lower rate. Twilight Town doesn't have any clouds. The skies are perfectly clear, meaning that most terrestrial radiation is going to be lost. Some of it may remain, but not a lot of it. Compare that to Far Outpost, which is consistently cloudy and snowing. While it's not receiving much solar radiation either, the clouds have the potential to trap terrestrial radiation here, at least more of it than it does in Twilight Town. While neither of these locations will be warm, at least Far Outpost has an advantage given that there are clouds. Due to this, I suspect that if Twilight Town had any natural sources of water, well, they're going to freeze over. It's highly unlikely that they wouldn't be frozen unless warmer air was swept in via the wind from another region. Okay, so Twilight Town is going to be colder given the lack of clouds keeping terrestrial radiation in the town and the lack of sunlight entering it. What else happens here? Well, we're not getting any weather at all. What, did you think I'd say something else? Here's something you should probably know. Without the sun, the weather just can't happen. During my first ever meteorology course, my professor once said to me that, when in doubt, the answer to what causes the weather is the sun. I won't deny that it's a lot more complicated than that, but what he said is still true. It all ties back to the sun somehow. Now, I could get into why that is, and there are several different, complicated reasons for that, so I'm going to break it down just a little bit as best as I can. It's not going to be easy, but I promise I'll do my best to make it make sense for you. The main thing that the sun affects is the air itself. The air doesn't exactly act like it's supposed to without the sun heating it. Namely, the sun's heat causes the air to move. No, I'm not kidding, you need the sun for the air to move. Why? Let me explain. The sun doesn't heat the earth evenly. Sand will not heat up at the same rate as dirt, which doesn't heat at the same rate as the ocean, which doesn't heat at the same rate as the trees, and so on. I think you get the idea. The sun does not heat the earth evenly. This difference in heating causes temperature changes between the various sources that can absorb and reflect heat on Earth, but it also causes a difference in pressure across these regions. What does pressure have to do with it? Well, the difference in pressure across a distance is known as a pressure gradient. If this pressure gradient occurs through, well, any air density, assuming that air density is anything greater than 0, then what we have is a pressure gradient force, or PGF for short. Let's just say that we really love our acronyms in this field. This PGF is the very force that causes the wind to blow. So, if we have a difference in pressure, no matter how slight, the wind blows. Yet, there's a bit of a problem in Twilight Town. Without the sun, there isn't any way to get a difference in pressure for the wind to blow. So when this happens, or well, doesn't happen, the air stagnates and sits still. This leads to a lack of motion vertically. That might sound bad, but would you believe me if I told you that the picture gets just a tad worse? There are even greater problems in store for our dear Twilight Town. Without the sun, the water cycle sort of just stops. As a quick refresher, the water cycle starts with evaporation of water droplets that condense into clouds, which eventually lead to rain falling on the surface, and the surface absorbs the water or is evaporated into the atmosphere, thus continuing the cycle and allowing for plants to grow and various flora and fauna to thrive. Well, without the sun, we don't get evaporation. The sun is the main source responsible for heating the water to the point where it does evaporate. If the sun never shines, there's going to be extremely limited opportunities for evaporation to happen, if it happens at all for Twilight Town. Okay, so what happens then? Well, I have evidence of what will happen next. Plant life struggles to flourish. Just looking around town, and the routes surrounding Twilight Town, we can see evidence of this. The trees have 0 leaves on them. They hardly look alive. I'm sure somebody's darting to the comments right now to tell me that it's a part of the spooky aesthetic of this town, get over it. In fairness, it definitely adds to that feeling, but it's also true for a town facing a permanent night. This place is stuck in a perpetual cycle of receiving no precipitation. Of course plant life is going to struggle to thrive here. Photosynthesis is a process many plants, including trees, need to do in order to create energy for themselves so they can survive. It's kind of hard for a plant to do that without a light source. While the residents of Twilight Town can combat this by using artificial lights, just looking around town, we know that they don't do that. It doesn't seem to matter to them whether the plants thrive or not. For anyone to live in this town, they'd have to make a lot of changes that they just haven't made. I know these people like darkness and all that, but seriously, they shouldn't survive without some serious help from people outside of town. They would have to set up the best greenhouse system ever for them to live here given the lack of sunlight and lack of weather. If they could set up greenhouses to grow their own plants, though, that would certainly help their agricultural problems, assuming they have the necessary materials to make a greenhouse. Otherwise, if they want any consumable food or water of any sort, they'd have to import pretty much anything else they could possibly want. It's quite literally impossible for things to grow here or for water to flow naturally, especially if temperatures are currently below freezing, like I suspect they are. Unless they resort to eating golden leaves from that one tree or creepy steeple, they seem to have limited options for food otherwise. You know, maybe that's the real reason Duplass turned the villagers into pigs. He realized he needed something to eat and didn't have anything, so he cursed the town to turn villagers into pigs and planned on eating them once they all turned into pigs. Oh geez, that took a dark turn. Pretend I didn't say that. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video and want to see more content like this, be sure to subscribe. I have more videos planned. I hope you all have a good day.